Welcome to The Criminologist, the podcast dedicated to educating and entertaining our listeners. We bring you subject matter experts from around the world and share the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. This podcast avoids stereotypes and biases in favor of the lived experiences of those we can best learn from. Now, please welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello and welcome to episode 137 of The Criminologist podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. This week, I want to reshare with you all an interview I conducted almost 2 years ago, back in January of 2021. We here at the Criminologist podcast love bringing you subject matter experts from around the world, and in that respect, we do not disappoint this week. However, traditionally, the subject matter experts that we have on the show tend to fall into one of two camps. Either those with lived experiences, from whom we learn so much, and those who are involved directly or indirectly in the supervision of justice-involved individuals. What we are discovering, though, is that we are also needing to highlight the role of technology in this space. Before the year's end, we will be bringing you several subject matter experts who are going to share their experiences with technology. Next week, we'll be talking with Pia Puolakka. She is joining us all the way from Helsinki, Finland, to talk about her work with both smart prisons and artificial intelligence within the corrections sphere. And then we'll be bringing you another American Probation and Parole sponsored episode featuring the work of Simon Bonk. Simon's joining us all the way from Ottawa, Canada. He is the Chief Research Officer and Director of Business Development for Telio. You're really going to want to tune into that episode. Today, however, I'm going to share with you my awesome conversation with my dear friend, Jonathan Ley. Jonathan is joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. I'm going to let you tell Jonathan his whole story because it is fascinating. He did not start out in corrections or even in the public sector, which makes his journey that much more intriguing. Now, Jonathan and his team have done a lot of awesome work in the United Kingdom and beyond, but are looking to expand to the United States of America. So if after listening to this interview, you are intrigued and would like to learn more for yourself and or your agency, reach out to me. I am now a brand ambassador for Make Time Count Today and would love to tell you more about this groundbreaking technology. If there's one thing we learned during the pandemic within the world of corrections, it's that we really need to reevaluate our relationship with technology and reevaluate how we can truly leverage technology to better serve our clientele, by extension, our stakeholders, and really it's all about building staff resiliency and making their jobs that much more enriching. So please enjoy my interview with Jonathan Ley, and I will see you all on the other side. Why don't we start off, Jonathan, by you telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we can spend some time talking about your latest exciting adventure.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. So, hi, everybody. My name's Jonathan Ley. I'm the founder of Make Time Count. I'm British, as you might hear. I grew up in a very small town in Suffolk, a very rural area full of tractors and fields. I was brought up by my grandfather, who was a very strict Baptist, a local councillor, ran a few charities. So I always grew up doing things like playing wheelchair table tennis and wheelchair basketball. That was kind of the way I grew up. I then went off to university. I did most of my career I've spent with in the consulting and banking world, so with Accenture and then with Deutsche Bank. kind of traveling the world on sort of big transformational business projects. And then about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now, I got asked to do some consulting with the London Probation Service. So it's the first time I'd ever worked in a sort of a government environment. First time I'd ever been introduced to the criminal justice sector, and I suppose I've been somewhat bitten by the bug to try and do something to help people.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know we got to know each other. We were both in a webinar, I want to say, something criminal justice related, and then we got connected and have started this adventure together. You are now founder of Make Time Count Today. Tell our listeners first how the app was conceived and what that early development looked like, if you would.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, again, I said, I joined the criminal justice system with no expectation of well, actually, that's not true. I had certain expectations of the way government services are run, and I think most of them were met when I joined this sector, if I'm honest. So I was quite shocked actually by the way people are treated, by sometimes the barriers that get put in front of them to actually get on with their lives. It felt like the process was kind of like not set up to help them. Yeah, and as a result, a lot of them ended up with additional punishment. Even get sent back to prison. And I just thought there must be a better way. There must be a better way of helping people. So it wasn't like we came with a piece of technology and said, "Oh, we've got a piece of technology that's going to solve this problem for you." Actually, what I did is I went out. In London, they do a lot of what's called community payback, which is sort of unpaid work where you have to go and clean up a park or clean up a cemetery. So as I like to say, the idea was conceived, in sheds in South London, talking to I always say guys, but it was mainly 90%, men or young men. About the question I put to them is, how can I help? What do you need? How can I support you? So these are the kind of questions I asked them. And as we started to write down the answers, I was like, well, this problem isn't so difficult. Right, we've all got these things these days. We've all got solutions that we use in other sectors, on these little devices now that we carry around in our pockets. So we just started, literally with offenders, drawing sketches of what things might look like, and how things, might actually support them. And that's exactly how it came about. Really working with the offender, understanding what their needs are, and putting that into our technology. And I think as a result of that approach, I think we've come up with a very different product. Because our product isn't a case management system for probation managers. It's not a device to enforce punishment. It's a service that we try and provide to users. So we really focus on, when we heard, what can we do to help? What can we, when I asked, what can I do to help you? I got told, help me find a job. Help me get the training that will find me the job. Just tell me where I need to be. It amazed me in London when I started working there. They were sending out, well, they still are, sending out thousands of letters a week to people about new appointments, changes to appointments. You've missed your appointment. And I'm thinking, again, I don't know the sector, but a lot of the guys I meet, they seem to have chaotic lifestyles. I'm not sure whether they are staying in the same address, 7 days a week. And, the consequence of them not getting this letter could be prison, quite frankly. And that again, like I say, that shocked me. So we just thought, let's use simple tools that are out there already, and put it into a simple format. It's easy to use and just helps people, get on with their lives, basically.
You touched on a little bit of it there, Jonathan. So as it rolled out in London, what does that rollout in the United Kingdom look like?
So we started off start of 2020 using it internally in the London probation system, sorting out all of the trying to help them manage and schedule the projects, and that's worked incredibly well. We've reduced we reduced their reliance on sort of agency spend because we gave them visibility on on who they were using to facilitate. So that went really well, and that was really successful. And the groups that we're now looking to work with, so we're now trying to work with other police forces in the UK to try and help them when they're doing offender management. We're also trying to work with the prison service to support people when they're coming, through the gate process, so we can sort out the resettlement. I mean, I think in as anything in this sector, the real difficult things were around data security, protecting the data of the individual, making sure the system was secure, given again the type of customers we might have. Making sure that there was no scope for them to, get up to anything, any sort of nefarious business. So that was really difficult. Interestingly, we found that the adoption amongst service users and the acceptance of new technology amongst service users was probably stronger than amongst, the probation officer community. And I think that probably reflects the fact that most of the service users were younger, probably more open to new technology. So we have the functionality, for example, in our system. We heard, again, from service users, we heard a complaint was, I go to an appointment and then I'm told 3 weeks later by my probation officer that I didn't attend it because between signing the piece of paper at the front of the classroom to it getting on the computer, something happened. Like a piece of paper got lost or, so when I went to see my probation officer, I just get told, computer says, no, you weren't there. So I'm going to, give you additional punishment or I'm going to breach you or whatever. So we gave the users, and this was the idea of the users, we gave them the ability to take a selfie when they arrive and take a selfie when they leave. And the service users were like, oh, great, if that gives me photographic evidence that I attended something, then brilliant. When we proposed this to the probation officer, they're like, we're not sure that, we're not sure our service users will want photographs of themselves on the system. And when we asked the service users about that, we're like, do you see that as a problem? They're like, well, no. I think they've grown up, most of them, and they've got pictures all over the internet. They're not concerned by that anymore. So I think, that was something that we learned, that, the service users were more open to these ideas. And I think if we sort of look forward a few years, I think they'll expect it, right? I think there's more and more services now where you expect a sort of a phygital service, right? Part physical, part digital. I remember giving a talk in London and I said, look, I've flown here today. I didn't see anybody when I checked into the flight. I did it online. When I went into my hotel, I didn't actually see anybody. I didn't go to a desk. I got my card out of the machine. I went to buy lunch at the supermarket today before I talk, and I went to a self-service checkout desk. I didn't talk to anybody. So we've all got used to these things. It's not like they're not new technology anymore. We'll come to the point where eventually people will be surprised if they have to talk to someone. They'll be surprised if they don't have some sort of digital aspect. So that's our experience of that.
I should clarify from our listeners in the United States, you've been using that term service user, which I know is big in the United Kingdom, which is sort of the equivalent to when we say client over here. But it's all about the service user's experience. In fact, I think that was the aforementioned webinar that you and I met in. It was something about how can we involve the service user experience more in the supervision process. If I were a director of a community corrections agency here in the United States or working in a pre-release in prison, what would the benefits of the Make Time Count Today app be for me or for my staff or my agency?
That's an interesting question. So I think if you're heading a community corrections agency, the first thing I think we can do, and this isn't necessarily strictly just about the app, but we're trying to put ourselves kind of at the front when it comes to data analytics as well. So not just about helping the service user, but also what can we do with the data that we know about service users. So we've already proven in the UK that using our sort of advanced data analytics, we can be significantly more accurate about understanding who is at risk of reoffending. So I always use this term, you're at risk of reoffending. If we're talking about COVID, we would identify the at-risk groups and we would treat them in a special way. Why don't we take the same route with offenders, right? This group is at risk of reoffending. So we can, relatively simply with the data that you've got, identify that cohort. So let's say, we can identify the third of your cohort that's most likely or highest risk of reoffending, right? So we can that's the first major benefit, I think, because at the moment, we tend to spread our resources across all of our cohorts. So now we can help you focus your resources on the people that, most need it. So that's the first thing we can do. The second thing we do is, what we saw when we worked with probation officers in London is there was a massive amount of admin going on. Every time I had to reschedule an appointment, it might take 4 phone calls. Every time I tried to make a referral to a drug agency or to an external party, it was taking like 45 minutes because I had to phone up maybe 3 different clinics. I had to find out when somebody had a free slot. I then had to fill out the piece of paper. I still didn't get any feedback on whether the guy actually turned up or how good the service was. So by using our system, we reduce that admin overhead. So the system that we provide isn't just for the correctional agency. They can invite all of their service providers onto the same platform. And we call that the sort of the Airbnb for help. So now all of a sudden, like Airbnb, I just go, right, I want, I'm looking for counseling or I'm looking for mentoring in this zip code. Okay, I've got 5 providers. This one looks like it's most applicable for my user. I can see that they've got a slot next week. I'm going to book it. So now instead of taking an hour to make that referral, it's maybe taking 5 minutes. Right? And when your user, when your client, your offender, whatever you want to call them, when they go to that appointment, they check in. So at 9:30 in the morning, he's turned up. Great. And at 11:30, he checks out again. So in real time, he's just left that appointment. And when he leaves the appointment, again, he takes his selfie and he gets a little question. How well organized was the session? How did it help you? What impact has it had on your journey? So you get feedback from the user, the client, the offender. And at the same time, the facilitator of that session gives feedback on the offender. So now we've got 360-degree feedback on every single interaction that your user goes through. So in terms of supporting the correctional, we can tell you a lot more using, your own data. We can reduce significantly the amount of admin overhead that you've got to deal with. We can give you 360-degree feedback on every single interaction that you're having. And then what that allows us to do is, again, over time, we'll learn, okay, this type of offender responds well to this intervention, not so well to this one. So a little bit like Netflix, we'll start to recommend interventions. We'll say, if you've got this cohort, young female offender, they really engage with this type of intervention. And we know when people engage, they tend to get better outcomes. So by learning what works, we can support the users and making the right decisions about what interventions are. So when we were building the product, we spoke to a number of people from different industries about, how can we learn from your industry to do something better here? And we spoke to a marketing director at British Telecom, big telecoms company in the UK. And I was talking about how he uses marketing data and how you would use data to, again, highlight people who are at risk of reoffending. And he said to me, John, that the issue is that, we waste about 90% of our marketing budget. The trouble is we don't know which 90%, so we have to keep spending it. And I kind of took a parallel to rehabilitation efforts. We probably waste 50 to 60% of what we're doing, right? Because we're doing the wrong things to the wrong people. The trouble is we don't really know. We know we have high reoffending rates. We know we have high reincarceration rates. So we know the process doesn't really work. But we don't know. We don't really know why, and we don't know what could work better. And if we did, obviously we'd already be doing it. So that's what we're trying to do for a corrections agency: is to say, look, we understand who your cohort is that you should be focusing on. We'll help you manage them in a more streamlined manner, so that the time you do get with them is value adding. Not like a lot of the meetings we witnessed, did you go here? Did you go there? Did you do this? Did you do that? Well, all that admin is taken care of by the system. So now you can say, right, how can I help you? What is it that you need? And we can focus on those needs in those sessions. So that's how I think we would transform the community corrections area. And then when it comes to custody, so there's two real benefits we think we give to custody, and we're just going live with our first prison actually next week. We've got a lot of interest from a number of prisons in the UK. So the first area is On pre-release in the UK, you're often sent out on what's called ROTL, so release on temporary license. So you get let out, I don't know what the American term is, but you get let out during the day to go to place of employment. And what tends to happen is, because it's an admin overhead for the prison, they have to make sure you've arrived, and they have to make sure you've stayed there all day and you've left on time. They often don't like sending out individual people to different projects or different places of work. So I've got to ring up in the morning. Did Sam arrive? Ring up in the evening. Has Sam left at the right time? Okay, we expect him back. So it can be difficult if you're sending out 20 guys, because then you've got to make 40 phone calls during the day. So it's quite an admin overhead. So they tend to send people out in clusters. So 6 people on one project. So they only have to make one phone call then. But the problem is, if something happens in the prison that they can't go out today, the employer has now lost 6 people. So that's only got to happen once or twice before the employer says, look, I can't rely on you guys. So I'm less likely to employ a cluster of people. I'll take one, because if I'm missing one guy, I can cope with that. If I'm missing a whole cluster, all of a sudden I can't meet my orders for the day. It's a real inconvenience. So as a result, it becomes harder to find placement for the people. So what we've said is, look, they either take their own phone, because most of them have got them, not in the prison, but in the lockers kind of outside. They take their own phone, or they take a prison phone. When they get to the place of employment, same thing, they check in. So the prison gets real-time information, right? Sam has arrived, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, he's arrived at his warehouse. 5 o'clock in the evening, Sam checks out. So we now know that Sam's been there all day, and if we want to, we can put in interim check-ins during the day to make sure he's still there. He hasn't come up with an agreement with his supervisor that says, turn up at night, and then you can go and see the wife or whatever you want to do all day and just come back. So we can have check-ins during the day every couple of hours to stop that. But at the moment, we check in at the morning, check in at night, and we can even have, you're supposed to be back at the prison by 6:30. So we have a check-in at 6:30. So when you're back at the prison, to check in, just to make sure, it's more about providing safety to the prisoner, right? So we now know that you got back on time. And it's the same thing. So at the end of the day, the inmate gives feedback on the day's employment. The employer can give feedback as well. So now we know, let's say this is the 4 weeks before Sam's release. We can see his feedback. So Sam's gone out every day, Monday to Friday. He's working. He's getting great feedback. He's obviously, able now to work in the community in a safe way. Might as well getting great feedback. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is, maybe we see for the first 2 weeks, Sam's getting great feedback, and all of a sudden the feedback changes. All of a sudden he's not getting such good feedback anymore. So again, this is a sort of a warning to the staff to say, look, Sam, what's happened? You might find, my girlfriend dumped me the weekend over telephone, and everything's crap again, and I've got to work in this warehouse. I hate it. So it might be a way of finding out, something happened to this person, and it's a leading indicator of something gone wrong, or something lagging that something's gone wrong, but a leading indicator that you might start causing trouble again. So that whole temporary release process we can make much simpler for everybody involved, and therefore much more acceptable and much more likely to be used. And then the whole direct through the gate process. So when you're still in prison, you can work with your release manager, and they can say, right, what do you actually need? We know you need a home, we know you need a job, and we know you need support with your drug and alcohol issues. So I'm going to book you, I'm going to connect you with all of these groups on the outside. And I tell you what, have you got a mentor that I can invite onto the platform as well? Have you got a parent that I can invite onto the platform as well? So when you leave, you're not leaving on your own. You're leaving with a group of people who can all interact with you on your phone, that have all got your best interest at heart, and can interact with the resettlement manager. We can even invite the probation officer on there as well. So now we've got 5 or 6 people that are all working together to help you. So all those appointments are booked. I know what I'm going to do in the first 24 hours, 48 hours, 7 days after release. I know where I've got to be, and that's all scheduled in my calendar. And the other key thing is, what we heard is people coming out of prison, they turn up for probation, they've lost their license, they've lost their CV that got done for them, they've lost all those documents. So again, we've got a secure document storage where the resettlement manager can upload everything. And when you go to those meetings that you've got to go to, you've got your CV, you've got your license, you've maybe got a certificate from the doctor that says you genuinely got some medical issues that need to be taken into consideration. All the documents that the prison wants to give you are secure. And you can share those with your probation officer. You can share those with your, the drug and alcohol clinic. So that's something we can do that I think is, again, transformative for the inmate. We're setting this up all before you release, and it's to support you in that post-release. So we try and create what we call a sort of an ecosystem of support around the individual to make sure that, it's the mentor that's there, it's the family member that's there, it's that drug clinic that's there, all the people that genuinely want to help you. And we took a lot of advice from the so-called nudge unit, so the sort of behavioural insights group. There's a lot of positive nudges that there's not so much evidence from the criminal justice system, although there is some, but there's quite a lot from the education system. So there's a lot of evidence that suggests if you have an aunt or an uncle that you look up to, and they know that you've got a test at school tomorrow, or they know that you've got an assignment that needs to be handed in, the research shows that just because you know that they know, even if they don't contact you about it, scores go up. Pass rates go up. The fact that it gets handed in goes up. So our hypothesis is that we're very similar in the criminal justice system. If I'm on probation, if I know that my Uncle Bob knows that I've got a community payback appointment tomorrow, or I've got a job interview tomorrow, I also know that he will see if I don't turn up. And the last thing any of us wants, and we've all had it as kids, your dad says, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Right, and none of us want that conversation. And our hypothesis, because we're still testing it, is this will work in the criminal justice system. If we've got visibility to multiple people, there's no excuse anymore. You can't say, I lost the letter. That excuse doesn't exist anymore. I know you read the note, because I can see you read the note. So it's getting rid of those excuses. It's using those nudges that are really powerful in other sectors. In this industry as well. So I think that, sorry, it's a very long answer to your question, but I think genuinely, I think we've got transformational benefits to both correction agencies, and to prisons, and even if the impact on rehabilitation is 2%, now that's enormous. Just that little, in the UK, that would be £1 billion of savings to society. So if I can sit there in 20 years' time saying, 20 years of effort, we've moved it 2%. Some people might say, well, 2%, that isn't much. Well, that's £1 billion. And if there's 20 people, 20 ideas like mine, right, that all have that 2% impact, then that would be huge, right? So then now we've moved the dial by 20% between, 10 different ideas. Now that has a transformation impact on society. That's the thing that, I think really, makes me excited. I mentioned before, the first half of my career was with, accountants and bankers and all that kind of stuff. And it is soulless, right? And that's kind of why I left it. And now here to think, all right, the next 20 years of my career can really have an impact on society, on people's lives, is really quite, it is something that gets me up in the morning. It's something that, I've now become, really, really passionate about over the last kind of, 3.5 years.
You use that word transformative twice, Jonathan, which I've seen the app and I know it is going to be transformative. And I don't mind the long-winded questions or answers rather, because you were knocking off a couple of questions there all at once. You really now talked about, the benefits of the agency, if you will. And you also were really talking about the benefits for the client, the service user. There's a third variable here when we talk about the sort of ecosystem that's being built. And I loved your Airbnb analogy, but talk about the benefits also, or the role that the service providers, whether it's people offering services around alcohol, drug, or housing, or employment, talk about their role again in this sort of ecosystem and the application.
Yeah, so I think, and this is crucial, and I think a lot of the research shows that it's these service providers, and quite often the very small ones, that really have an impact on people's lives. And there's countless stories of people saying, I met such and such while on this course, and they changed my life. Quite often they're totally chance meetings. You don't think they're going to have a massive impact, but they do. Something clicks in those relationships, and that's the one thing that transforms people's lives. So we know that these service providers probably have the biggest impact on the outcomes of people's lives. So I think the benefits of service providers are often, first of all, I mentioned how difficult it can be to refer somebody, how long it can take. So, if you think about, if I've got a caseload of 50 people, right, that means I probably only have When I think about my hours per month, take away all those team meetings, take away all those other things I need to do, that probably leaves me with maybe 2 hours per case per month. It's not long. Right? I now have to meet him or her once a month, so that's half an hour gone. So I've now got an hour and a half maybe to help this person. All my paperwork needs to be done, all the reporting needs to be done. So we talked about referrals. If a referral takes 45 minutes to an hour, which is what it was taking when we were looking at it, I'm not going to make many of them. Right? It just takes too long. I don't have if I start the process, I know it's going to take me an hour, and I don't know whether I have a successful outcome. I don't know after an hour of effort I've found this guy a place on a course. So I tend not to do as many referrals as I perhaps want to do. So the benefits of the service providers, by making the referrals smoother, we make more of them. Yeah, so us humans, we're creatures of habit, and we like things to be easy. So when it's easy to refer, I'm going to do more of them. So the benefits of service providers, I get more throughput. Right, so if I'm charging the prison or the probation service for delivering my services, I get paid more, which is great. If I'm a charitable organisation, I can increase my funding request because I can say I'm helping more people and I'm having bigger outcomes. So therefore, I get more funding. So smoothing that process down saves everybody in the chain kind of time and money. That's key for us. And also, I think for the service providers, and maybe there's a part of this for the corrections agencies as well, is we're able to provide a more dynamic view of risk. So again, risk at the moment is quite often actuarial. So I'm a 28-year-old man, and as a result, I have a certain I have a certain risk profile, and that risk profile kind of stays with me throughout my journey. Whereas in reality, we might have two 28-year-old males, and one of them is engaging with the process and complying, and the other one isn't. And again, our sort of system says, well, the person who's not engaging, the person who's not complying, is likely to be the one that you need to spend more time with. So we're able to say to the service providers, look, this guy is being referred to you, and he's got a history of non-compliance, and he's got a history of non-engagement. So, we're giving you two 28-year-old males, but with a very different profile to date. So and through the time that you got them, and you're sort of stable as a service provider, we also will dynamically adjust their scores based on how engaged they are, and how much they're complying with your wishes. So that's one of the things we give to service providers. It's that dynamic view of risk. So I think for service providers, it's the same as everyone else. We're trying to save time and money, and we're trying to reduce the admin overhead so that you can spend more time with people. But driving more referrals to you is key. But also, that whole dynamic view of risk we think is really important for the service provider as well. And also for some of the small service providers, the idea that you can give your users an app, so that's included in the package that we give to people. So you can now perhaps look like a slightly bigger organization than maybe you are, because you're able to give somebody a piece of technology that you probably can't afford on your own. So I'm able to appear perhaps more, I want to say more professional, but more sort of bigger than I am, right? So I'm giving you our app, and I'm giving you a chat functionality, and I'm giving you the ability to check in and give feedback. So all of that is quite good. But I also think the feedback is critical for service providers as well, because again, I think a lot of these service providers provide great service, but they probably don't get to shout about it as much as they would like to. So, I think that these service providers will be able to demonstrate, look, I've seen 100 people, the average score that I get, so we just ask for like a really simple green face, amber face, red face, really, we try and keep it really simple for users. But they can say, look, 80% of the respondents we get a green face. So we got a net promoter score of X. Here's the feedback that people say about our courses. So that enables service providers to, again, I think, shout loudly about the quality of services they're providing. They don't have the resources to do a big survey once a year that maybe other big providers do. So, I think that information, that insight is really important to service providers, because I'm convinced that they'll have, probably the best feedback that we'll see in the system.
If people are intrigued by what they've heard and they want to learn more, are they able to see a demo of the Make Time Count Today application, Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. We're more than happy, as you've heard, to talk about what we've done. So your listeners can contact you or contact me. So my email address is just jonathan@maketimecount.today. So they can send me an email. They can get in touch with you through this podcast as well. And as I said, we're more than happy to show what we can do. But also, we're more than happy to listen, and I think that's important. So we started this journey by listening to what people's problems were, and we actually went to the APA conference in San Francisco in 2019. So we just wanted to see what was in the US market, and we had a stand, but less about talking about what we could do. I ask people as they come past, what are your problems? What are the challenges that you face? Help me understand whether the challenges in the US are the same as in the UK. So, as I said, we're more than happy also to talk about what we do, but also to listen to people, because our platform can do a lot, but there's probably other things that people have got challenges in other ways. And, we're having a lot of these conversations. That's how we've ended up talking to the police. That's how we've ended up talking to other charities. Oh, can you also do this? Because we love what you do here, but we need this as well. And, we're quite open to saying, well, if we build this little bolt on, we can help you that part of the service as well. So yes, they can get in touch with you. They can get in touch with me. We can show you, the portal. So all of your staff get a portal. They can do all of the things that I've talked about. You can manage all of your staff, all of your users. You can schedule all of your interventions. You can make sure that you've got the right staff for the right interventions. You can make sure they're not traveling too far, that there's not too much time between appointments. So we really make that whole process a lot smoother. And obviously we give the app to the users, and we also give the app to your staff. So we can more than happy to show you all of that. And as I say, more than happy to listen to what other challenges are out there that we can try and solve.
I can tell you, as a former probation officer, I would have loved having the app, the Make Time Count Today app, when I was supervising a caseload, and like you said, relying so much on the mail or the post, as you call it, and how advantageous this would have been. And I absolutely love your infinite mindset, Jonathan, as far as we want to listen and learn more and make an even better product. Jonathan Ley is the founder of Make Time Count Today. I will leave his email and contact information in the show notes of this episode. Or, of course, as Jonathan said, feel free to reach out to the show to learn more. Jonathan, I thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
I should point out that just 2 weeks ago, Jonathan and his team at Make Time Count Today were awarded winners of the Best Digital Transformation Product or Service by the National Solution for Diversion, sponsored by the National Police Chiefs Council over in the United Kingdom. So kudos to them, and a great acknowledgement for all the hard work and really vision that Jonathan and his team bring to this sector. Again, if you are intrigued or curious, please reach out to me as brand ambassador for Make Time Count Today, or Jonathan himself. I will leave contact information for Jonathan in the episode description of this program. As I reflect back on my 34 plus years of experience in corrections, I am reminded of how the job itself has changed so much due to technology. I did not have a personal computer when I started as a probation officer with the Florida Department of Corrections back in 1988. Everything was done on paper and with letters and phone calls to clients. I believe one of the many things we learned during COVID is that we need to be flexible in our approaches to supervising individuals. And by that, I mean really challenging the status quo. One thing that drives me absolutely bonkers is when I hear a practitioner or an administrator reply to me by saying, "Well, we've always done it that way." Juxtapose that mentality with the infinite mindset that you heard on display just now from Jonathan, and I hope you'll be intrigued enough to reach out for more information. Again, you can contact me directly through the show's email address of thecriminologist@gmail.com. Reach out to me if you are one of my many LinkedIn connections. You may also reach out to Jonathan himself. His email is jonathan@maketimecounttoday. That's jonathan@maketimecounttoday. I'll also leave links in the description of this program as to contact information and Make Time Count's website. Back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to core correctional skills, program design, or, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. We are also on Twitter at Crim Media Group. That's CRIM Media Group. Go ahead and give us a follow. You may also connect with me or Jonathan Ley on LinkedIn and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Hey, lastly, if you've not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this program. Merchandise is available. If interested, just visit theparagongroup.llc.com and look for the tab entitled Shop for all sorts of details on securing your Criminologist coffee mug, refrigerator magnet, or pen. And if you believe in what we're doing on the program, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a colleague or a coworker about us. Ask them to subscribe to the podcast. And of course, do so yourself if you've not already done so. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, or training opportunities, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more content and videos on our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Both the Criminologist Podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.